Hey guys, this is John, and welcome to another episode of Climbing the Tactics Training Ladder. So I'm getting ready for my match against Grandmaster Tall Baron on Saturday, and one thing I like to do before a competition is solve tactics, make sure I'm sharp. That's one of the things you can do in the short term that's going to benefit your game immediately. So let's keep climbing. And I also wanted to say, if you're stuck with your tactics training, but you're doing the things that we've talked about in this series that I've been advocating, which are really common sense things, honestly, like solving for accuracy, not taking any problems off, not blitzing through problems just because you don't want your rating to go lower if you take too long solving them. If you're doing those things and you're still stuck, just keep going. I mean, I'd much rather have you gain only a few points but doing the problems right, like getting those fundamentals down, versus like inflating your rating but really making bad habits, because this is all practice for your real games anyways. You don't get any points for tactics training. So you got to practice like you play. And the fact that I'm at 2307, which is lower than my actual rating and far lower than what I think my tactics rating should be after 4 hours of tactics, that tells you that it takes a while, guys. Like, your rating is not going to go up overnight solving tactics, as is your normal rating. Like, just keep going. Practice those habits. It's all about those correct habits. So let's get into it. White to move here. So white has sacrificed a piece on the king side. The first thing I notice is that black's pieces are pretty far removed from his own king. Knight g4 stands out because even though it's not an immediate checking move, it's not an immediate forcing move, it does threaten stuff like knight f6 or knight takes h6. So I like that a lot. And I noticed that, yeah, if black tries to hide their king, so let's say knight g4, king h8, I can play knight h6, threatening queen h7 mate. And if bishop takes f6, probably just e takes f6 then, whereupon I'm threatening queen g7 mate. If rook g8, there's queen takes h6. So I don't think black can go that way. I also think if knight g4, king f8, I should be able to take on h6, threatening queen f7 mate again. Bishop takes, queen takes. I don't know if I'm going to be able to checkmate without introducing another piece, but it looks good. Aha, okay, so revising my idea, I think I can get this knight into the game in a better manner. So instead of knight g4, what about knight f5? That threatens queen takes g7 mate. And note that the e-pawn is pinned, so we've got this lateral pin going. Yeah, I don't see a defense for black after knight to f5. That looks pretty brutal, in fact. Better than knight g4, I believe. We're not going to checkmate black, but we are going to win their queen. And they're going to have insufficient compensation there. So let's swing over here. Okay. So only got 1 point for that, but that problem was a little deceptive. If we look at the starting position, it feels like white should be playing for checkmate here in view of black's relatively naked king. Really, the bishop is the only thing defending it. But even though queen and knight are a potent attacking unit, I just wasn't seeing much with knight to g4. So if I go here, knight g4 was falling a little short. And this is a nice new feature that chess.com has, by the way. They're showing the inline analysis when you click over to the analysis. I like that a lot. You get the stockfish evaluation immediately. So we can see that white is +3 in this line, but I don't think it's as convincing. Like, one line I was looking at was king f8, take here, threatening queen f7 checkmate, bishop takes, queen takes, king here. But I think without the introduction of a rook, like swinging a rook up to help out, it's not going to be immediately winning. However, that knight f5 move is decisive because queen takes g7 mate is only stoppable by playing e takes f5, and then we can go take the queen. The fact that the queen is undefended also stood out. I didn't mention that when I was solving it, but that's something that should be made note of here. The queen on b6 has no defenders. So there you have it, knight f5, strongest move. Next problem. Okay, bishop takes f3. We have a lot of pressure coming down on this pinned knight on f6. Queen takes f3 would add another attacker. It almost seems too obvious. I get nervous when the problem seems too obvious. But yeah, queen takes f3. We got to address our own queen. And we don't want to cash in knight takes f6 yet. Queen takes, knight d4, knight takes f6 check, most likely. And then what happens if king h8? That's probably the only move black can make that doesn't immediately lose a piece. So I want to make sure I'm thinking of something after king h8 is played so I don't have to readjust. We don't want to just dive headlong into the variation without considering it to the end. So queen takes f3, knight d4, knight takes f6 check, king h8. What then? Because if the queen is driven away, black can win f6. That worries me. Queen takes f3, knight d4. Maybe we're playing queen takes f6 instead. Queen takes f6, bishop takes f6, bishop takes f6. Then white has two minor pieces for the queen, and if black's queen moves away, we have knight e7. That must be it. Yeah. Okay, so I adjusted the move order in my head. Knight takes f6 was not working, but this does the trick. Beautiful idea. Take with the bishop now, attacking the queen. And after this, we're going to be up a piece. And we bank 7 rating points. Let's explore that, because one thing I harp on constantly when solving tactics is if you see a good idea, it's promising, but maybe not as promising, not as immediately winning as you would like, try to twist around that move order. That's going to help you out a lot. And good players just do that naturally. Like, they have a set of 3 moves they're thinking about, move A, B, and C in a combination. They're not just going to rigidly stick to A, B, C. They're going to look at move A followed by move C and then move B, or move B first followed by move C and then A. All those different permutations. So if we go explore this problem, bishop takes f3. We got to address the queen, and we don't want to cash in on the pin right now. That would not be smart. So queen takes f3. We're leaning heavily on the pin knight on f6. It's attacked 3 times. Black cannot add another defender. And as I said, it's pinned, so they would lose their queen if they did that. So knight d4 is practically forced here. Black must try to divert white's queen from attacking f6. Now, originally, knight takes f6 was the move I looked at, because that seems like the most consistent. Hoping for bishop takes and then queen takes, white's up a piece on that line. Fine. But after knight takes f6, there's king h8. And as you can see from the evaluation, and just from looking at the position, the queen will be driven away now, and black will get a chance to play bishop takes f6, regaining the piece. White can't avoid moving the queen because knight takes f3 check is too immediate of a threat. I don't have time to do something fancy like this. I'm trying to discover to attack black's queen. They get this in with check. So that's not working. So then, again, we're considering our permutations. Bishop takes makes no sense because of, again, knight takes f3 check. But queen takes, on the other hand. So capturing the knight in a different way, one of these 3 options we have, this one turns out to be the best. They take, and now bishop takes. Important to take with the bishop, trapping in black's king and threatening the black queen. So if the queen moves, we would have knight e7 check, is one line that could have been demonstrated in this trainer. And black would be forced to part with the queen. Again, white's up a piece at the very end. I guess black can take the pawn on c2, but it doesn't matter too much. Nice problem involving move order and which way to capture a piece that's attacked multiple times. Alrighty, next one. Endgame problem going on here. Okay, so looks like white is probably playing for a draw in this case, just defining our objectives immediately. And again, I want to reiterate, I'm always looking at forcing moves. Our checks and our captures are major threats. Just because we're doing higher rated problems, that doesn't mean I'm not looking at forcing moves. The solutions just tend not to be immediately forcing a lot of times. They tend to be more subtle when you get to the higher rating levels. But I am still looking at stuff like bishop takes a2 and checking on f2 or h8. So we got to do something about this a pawn. It's on the verge of promotion. Bishop takes a2, rook takes a2 skewers us. That's not going to cut it. There's no stalemate or anything. So what if we throw in a check on h8 first? That way, after king e7, bishop takes a2, rook takes a2, white would have to defend rook and knight versus rook. That is a theoretical draw, however. And actually, maybe not a difficult one, given that black's pieces are kind of gummed up there. But rook check, king g7 does attack the rook, but then I can throw in rook g8, I suppose. Rook g8, king moves somewhere, let's say f6, and then again, bishop takes a2. That might work. However, rook h8 check, king g7, rook g8. What about king h7? That way, after bishop takes a2... okay. I thought I was onto something for a second, but maybe not. So let me explain myself. Rook h8, king g7, rook g8 check, king to h7, bishop takes a2, rook takes a2. I'm thinking of king to b1. That way, if black takes our rook, we take their rook, and that's a draw. However, there's knight c3 check, I think is the problem. Knight c3 check, king c1. Then if they take the rook, it's actually stalemate. However, after knight c3, maybe rook a1 check, king b2, rook b1. Ah, but then king a3. Wow, that is sophisticated. That's a really cool idea if that in fact works. Just because of the rarity of that sort of concept, I don't know if you're following along with me at all, or if it just sounds like I'm giving you gibberish lines, but this idea is rather striking, so I kind of think it's probably the answer. These problems tend to do that. But I'm double checking just to make sure there's not some sort of major gap in my understanding of this position. No, I think this is it. Because we can't really stop the a-pawn any other way. I got to sack my bishop, but I don't want to get skewered. So I think we're going to have to go down this path. So now we take. And I think it's crucial to play this move. White has to play for stalemate. Yeah, and now this is the only move. Black takes the rook at stalemate. So black's going to try not to take the rook. But now we can step here, and it's the same sort of stalemate issue. Okay, so which way do I step here? I got to step to a2. Yeah, attacking their rook. There's no other good move. Again, we got to come back here, and we solve the problem for 5 points. Yeah. Nice example of stalemate saving a position that looked pretty desperate. And the stalemate was set up in 2 different ways, with the king on either c1 or a3. That's nifty. So that deserves some exploration here. So as I said, we're looking at forcing moves, but white is going to have to part with the bishop. That's pretty clear. It's just a matter of when do we do it. Don't want to do it right away because of check, and we get the skewer. There's no stalemate in sight in this case. So looking at the check, rook h8 check is better than rook f2 because rook h8 gets the rook off the second rank where black is trying to set up the skewer. So check there. Now if king e7, just bishop takes a2 is fine. And I mentioned that this is a theoretical draw. This is the only time this is dangerous for the side with the rook is if your king is kind of sidelined and it's on the edge of the board and the opponent is closing in with all their pieces coordinating. I believe Garry Kasparov won that particular ending against Judith Polgar one time. Yeah, rook and knight versus rook. But, you know, the vast majority of the time it is a draw. So the critical line is what happened, king g7. Now, I must do something with my attacked rook, so rook g8 suggests itself. If black were to play king f6 or king h6, it's pretty easy. We just take, and there's no issue with this rook hanging. So king h7 is the toughest move. Now here, we have to sacrifice the bishop. Like, now is the time to do it. There's no more useful checks to give, so we got to give up the bishop. Black takes, and crucial to play king b1, attacking the rook. You don't want to mess up with king b3. I think if king b3, just rook b2, there will not be a stalemate in this case, and black is ready to play king takes g8 on the next move. So, king here. Now, if black takes on g8, we take on a2, immediate draw. Black has to free up their rook, and ideally with check. So either knight c3 as played or rook b2. If rook b2, we can go to the corner. And again, if black takes the rook, it's stalemate. So knight c3 check, king c1. But here too, white has set up a stalemate. King takes g8, nowhere for that white king to go, draw. So if black wants any chance, they again have to move their rook, or maybe the knight, but knight here check, king b1 isn't going to change anything. The rook's always under attack, or stalemate is threatened. So here, and the final nuance is seeing that rook a1 check, king here, accurate. Rook b2 check, king a3, and again white has set up a stalemating net. Black's rook and knight work against him. He never has time to take the rook without giving white the draw. So check, nothing changes. Very nice problem. Good one. Okay, let's keep pressing on. So here, black is down a bit of material, 1 point of material. The queen is under attack. We could play a check down here on b1. Bishop takes a6 is also a forcing move. It's a capture. If bishop takes a6, also we should note that white's queen is under attack. But if bishop takes a6, I suppose white will play queen to d7 check. Not queen takes b8, because then knight takes b8, and black will be guarding their own bishop. So bishop takes a6. This is just the first move I'm investigating because it looks interesting. Queen d7. Let's say king to g8. Bishop takes a6. There's a check down here, but the bishop can come all the way back to f1. I don't see that panning out for black. So bishop takes a6. I'm not liking due to queen d7. Let's look at the queen check immediately. So queen check on b1. If bishop f1 there, bishop takes a6, and perhaps we can use the pin on the bishop. So I think on queen b1 check, white will probably play king f2. That's my read. Ah, but then we can take the queen. What am I talking about? Is this just really simple? Queen check and then take white's queen? Yeah, that might be much simpler than I anticipated. We don't have to mess around with anything else. Yeah, that's got to be it. Check. Okay, only got 1 point once again, but it took me a little while. I was confused by all the stuff going on here, especially the mutual attacks on the queen. Black's queen on b8, white's queen on d8, both attacked by a knight. So sometimes your instincts do lead you in the wrong direction to start. I am a big believer in following your chess instincts because in an over-the-board game, that's all you have to work with, your instincts, your calculation. But, you know, not a big deal if you look at a move that doesn't end up working and you spend a lot of time on that move. Like, we can't help ourselves for that. So bishop takes a6 was the first move I looked at because what appealed to me is that if white plays queen takes b8, moving their attacked queen, then black plays knight takes b8, and the bishop here is defended nicely. Problem is, white can play queen d7 check instead. Just insert that move. And after black moves, I think just bishop takes a6, white should be doing well, as you can see by that evaluation. However, our other forcing move, our other major forcing move, queen b1 check does the trick, and yeah, that's that. Whatever white does, king f2 or bishop f1 can be met by knight takes d8. I didn't even go any further than that after I saw that the queen is just going to be picked up. Next problem. All right, materially, white is down a pawn. White has nice pressure down the g-file, though, from the looks of it. This could be a move order problem. The first line I looked at was bishop takes e5 check, forcing. Queen takes e5, and now queen takes f7. Idea, rook takes f7, rook d8 check. And whichever way black blocks, they get mated. However, bishop takes e5, queen takes f7 runs into queen takes g3, giving the queen back. So if we tweak the move order, what if I play queen takes f7 first? That seems ridiculous because the rook is defended twice, but whichever way black takes, there's some sort of deficiency. Yeah, let's do it. Take it. Black takes with the queen, and now we take here. And black will be forced to give up that queen on f6 or g7, probably queen f6. Pure move order dilemma right there. So, fortunately this time, even though I looked at bishop takes e5 first, because I looked at that line and saw the flaw with it, I was able to pinpoint the correct move order. Reciprocal thinking, thinking backwards. That's what I did right there. So bishop takes e5 is the move that jumped out. And then queen takes f7, looking for rook takes f7 and then check, which would lead to checkmate after black gives up the queen and then the rook. However, black has this nice resource, queen takes g3 check, giving the queen back but living to fight another day, and black is up a pawn in the endgame. A bit better. But that lays the seed of this idea, the fact that perhaps black's queen is overloaded, perhaps that black is weak on the back rank, so we just twist around the move order now that we kind of sense what the trajectory of this problem is. Queen takes f7 does the trick. That way black never has time to sacrifice for that rook on g3, which is doing a very good job of blocking black from ever leaving the h8 square with his king. And there's a number of moves here for black, but they all fail. So if rook takes f7, then rook d8 check is working again. We don't have to bother with taking the bishop. Black's just going to have to give up both pieces and get checkmated. If queen takes f7, there's bishop takes e5, as you saw. And black will just be down too much material after this. Take, and actually they're getting checkmated again. So really, no other move left. I guess bishop takes f4, but bishop takes f4 is getting mated in one. Queen g7, checkmate. So kudos to you if you saw that quickly as well. Black to move. Black is down an entire rook here. Wow. Black does have the c3 pawn and the a4 pawn. We do have the possibility of forking, too. c2 forking the two rooks. I'm also looking at white's king position. Moves like knight g4 check and rook e7 are forcing, so we got to analyze them. Rook e7 is catching my eye because maybe I can set up a mating net involving the rook, the black knight, and even this bishop from a distance. Rook e7 check. White has to play either king f2 or king f4. King f4 runs into rook e4, so we can cross that off our list. That's checkmate. King to f2, rook e2, let's say. King g1 forced. Knight f3 check. King f1 is forced. But then I think we just do a discovery and like rook d2. And that should be checkmating quite quickly. Yeah. So maybe we don't even need c2 by my calculations. Rook e7 is leading to checkmate, I think, by force. I'm just double checking to make sure. Yeah, rook check, king f2, crucial. Rook e2 has to go to g1. Knight f3, going to the corner is going to get mated with the rook. King f1 runs into, I think, rook d2 is the easiest. Let's do it. Note that the king can't step to d3 or d2. That's very important. Check. And problem solved. So if this problem had continued a couple more moves. This is a lot better, by the way. I know I was kind of hard on chess.com in the past because they didn't have the evaluation so readily attainable, I guess. I think they were giving evaluations in the past, but it wasn't in a very intuitive sense. I like this new interface change that they made. The 3 stockfish lines, 3 top lines just up there. So rook e7, king f4 gets mated right away like this. And the rest of this combination just proceeds by force. Check. King g1, only move, check. And if king h1, there's rook h2 checkmate. That's a common pattern. Rook and knight assisting each other to checkmate. So if the problem had continued, almost any rook discovery works. But I was going to play rook d2, blocking the rook from reaching d3. And notice how the knight is controlling g1 and e1. That's a nice way of trapping in the black king. And this bishop does a good job from a distance. All white can do is play rook b5, take, knight c4, and get checkmated. So in this one, you had a tempting move immediately with pawn to c2. But you don't just want to jump on that because you're down material and you're hoping to get it back. Got to consider your forcing moves too, like rook e7 and knight g4. Knight g4 I didn't even really key in too much because I had a feeling that knight was going to be more helpful on h2, actually, taking away the f3 square. Here, white can play king over, and the knight is not really combining with the rook to set up some sort of checkmate. Let's do a couple more. Knight takes f5. So the queen is under attack. Queen f2 stands out, as does knight f4. As does queen g5, perhaps. Queen g5 would fork the king and the knight. Let's just investigate that one. Knight back to g3. Then maybe, knight f4, but king h2. White is running away and hiding. Our king is pretty exposed too. I know black has the jump on the white king for the moment. But if white gets a chance, they could set up some threats against our own king. Queen f2 is a point-blank check, and white must play here, so we should probably look at that. So queen f2 check, king h1. I really wish my queen was not standing on f2 then, so I could play knight f2 check and fork the king and the queen. But let's say after check, king h1, black plays e takes f3. That would set up the threat of queen g2 checkmate. I know white has a couple checks, but I think I can dodge them with my king if white checks me with their knight. So that's looking mighty tempting right now. Maybe they'll play queen to g1, however. Queen f2, king h1, e takes f3, queen g1. And unless we have something there, I think the threat of queen g7 is significant. Another line I looked at was queen f2, king h1, knight e1. But that allows white's queen to come up to, say, d5 or d7 and get a bunch of checks in. I don't like that. What about the knight moves? So knight f4. Knight f4, probably king h1. No real good follow-ups as far as I can tell. Knight e1 check, which I didn't say originally, but it is a candidate. King h1 again. And what's the What's the follow-up? I'm not seeing it. Okay, there's also e takes f3. I definitely got to look at that. E takes f3, because after queen takes f3, there's knight e1 check, winning the queen. Okay, so that's looking like the most promising right now. E takes f3. If king g3, queen f4 is mate. If king f1, queen f2 is mate. So e takes f3, white must play king h2 or king h1. King h2 is going to lead to queen f2 followed by queen g2. So I've narrowed it down to e takes f3 check, king h1. Okay, and then knight f2 check. I think they have to play king g1 in that case. And, ooh, man, I'm tantalizingly close to mate there. My queen is hanging in a lot of lines, though, is the only thing. E takes f3, king h1. Knight f2 check, king g1. If knight takes d1, knight takes e3, knight takes e3, white's pawns are really fast over here. That's the one thing I don't like about this. Trading into an endgame. So e takes f3, king h1, knight f2 check, king g1. I guess there's queen g5. Queen g5, they take the knight, though. Queen g2, king e3, white escapes. So maybe knight takes h3 double check instead. Knight h3 double check. King h2. Queen e2 might win. I hesitate to say might, but okay, so e takes f3 check, king h1, knight f2 check, king g1, forced. Important to say that's forced. Knight takes h3 check. If king h2, I think queen e2 is going to take care of business. Queen takes e2, f takes e2. I don't see how I'm not queening there. Yeah, white's knight can't stop us. So after knight takes h3, I think white's forced to play the king back to h1. But what then? Again, we're really close to checkmate, but how do we seal it? Knight f2 check, king g1 again. We've eliminated the h-pawn. Again, I'm looking at knight takes d1, knight takes e3, knight takes e3, and then white playing some sort of pawn move, probably b6, pawn b6. I can't stop that pawn once it goes to b6, though. Maybe I can. f2 check, king takes f2, knight g4. Wow, if that's the solution, that's pretty deep. I mean, I might be missing something easier than this, but I think the line I'm calculating right now works. It's just like several moves into the future. Like 10 moves into the future of this game. But hey, it seems to work as far as I can tell. So let's run through that one more time. I'm probably not going to get any points on this problem, but it's more important to solve it correctly. E takes f3. Queen takes f3 is losing. King f1 is losing. King g3 is losing. So king h2 also losing. So king h1 forced. Knight f2 check. King g1. Knight takes h3 double check. King h1. Knight f2. King g1. Knight takes d1 check. Knight takes e3. Knight takes e3. Maybe I should throw an f2 first. Maybe f2 first is better. f2 check, king f1. Maybe that's not better, though. Now I'm worried if white can draw that endgame. It's unfortunate to hit a snag so deep into your calculation, but gotta stick with the problem. Knight f2 check, king g1, knight takes d1, knight takes e3. F2 check, king f1, Knight takes e3, king takes f2, knight takes c4. But then b takes a6. I think white might be able to draw that position. All right, can I make this easier on myself? Let's say e takes f3 check, king h1. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong move there. Maybe knight f2 is not the way. Maybe it's just queen e2. Yeah, what about queen e2? Queen e2, if white takes it, then we take and the pawn is queening, no matter what. If knight takes h6, just king f8 probably. So I think on queen e2, white would have to play queen to g1, kind of box in their own king. Otherwise, queen g2 checkmate is coming. And there, knight f2 check, king h2. Oh, there has to be a win there. Knight f2 check, king h2. Knight e4 check. Knight e4 check, king h1. I'm falling short. Man, oh man. Queen e2, queen g1. Knight f2 check, king h2. I'm just going back to that line. Knight takes h3 does not work because of king takes h3. Kind of stuck. Let's investigate e takes f3, king h1, knight f2 one more time. I mean, I really think there's something there, but I wasn't finding it for whatever reason. So I can get the position where I win both the f-pawn and the h-pawn. But I'm not sure I win the endgame is the problem. Yeah, I have a strong sense the endgame might be a draw after staring at this position for a while. Could it be some wildcard move I haven't considered? I looked at pretty much all the checking and the forcing moves, however. I just wasn't finding it. This is always a tough situation when you want a move to work so bad, and you almost just focus in on it like a laser beam to the detriment of other moves. I hope I'm not doing that with e takes f3, but I've narrowed it down to king h1, which, like, my chess sense is just telling me that there's no way this works for white, but I can't find specifically why that's the case. I still can't figure out why that's the case. Okay, maybe I can play e takes f3, king h1, queen e2, and then queen g1, knight f2 check, king h2, knight g4, followed by f2. That might do the trick. Only because I think white's queen can't participate then. It can't come to g7. I'm going to try that line. I might get this one wrong, but I've spent a lot of time on it and investigated a lot of lines. I know I'm harping solving for accuracy, so I could try to spend 5 or 10 more minutes. It wouldn't make for very interesting viewing for you guys. But that's about the best I've got in my, what, like 10 minutes of thinking about this problem. So let's see. E takes f3, problem solved. I hate that. I absolutely hate that. This problem should not be solved immediately after this move, unless I'm missing something extremely obvious. You gotta go on with king h1. Kill me, chess.com. After I was praising your interface, which is nice, by the way. But yeah, this problem should go further. So let's investigate this one. And very quickly, let's rule out moves other than king h1. You can see that's the very top move. Queen takes f3 runs into check, and then we're going to be able to take their queen and save our queen in the process. So white can't do that. King g3 runs into queen f4 checkmate. King f1, same story, queen f2. King h2 runs into checkmate in 2, like so. So that only leaves king h1. I think we're all in agreement. Now, originally, I was really hung up on this line, knight f2 check. So again, trying to win white's queen, but we have to be careful how we do it. Now after king g1, I don't think we can just play this move, because after take, white's always got these pawns over here to start gaining counterplay with. Like they can take here, or yeah, maybe even play b6 and black loses actually, as you see, +7 in this case. That's because if I play f2 check, white can just take it. I don't have knight g4. That's why in the line I was investigating, black wants to win the h3 pawn, so knight takes h3 double check. White does not have time to take our queen. White still can't step to f1 because of mate. And if king h2, there's queen e2, forcing a trade, and this pawn is unstoppable. So on knight h3 check, king g1 is again forced. Then I was trying to wheel the knight back around, get this position again, and only now take the queen with the idea of playing this position. And here I was looking at f2 check and knight takes e3. F2 check might actually work according to the computer. I was not sure about this though. King g2, take, take. Maybe it's just saying big advantage, but there is no actual win. A takes b5. Okay, so take that pawn, take. Now the thing is, black's going to have to bring back their knight, knight d5, to try to stop the pawn. So this is what I was worried about, that we could get this position up a knight, but since white is just up against a rook pawn, okay, now the computer has found a win. I wonder if that's because, well, let's just say that we approach like this. I wonder if it's because eventually what black's going to do is like put white almost in a stalemate situation with their king. Literally in a stalemate situation. And then bring the knight in. Yeah, so like now we can play this, let the pawn go forward, and voila, black wins by a tempo. Knight f2 mate. I mean, that would be insane to calculate all that from the beginning. It's possible for a good calculator. But apparently there's an easier way, which might have been the line that I was intending to play had this problem gone on, which is way back here. So if king h1 had been played, going queen e2. Yeah, knight f2 seems to win based on that line we just analyzed, but I think queen e2 does the trick too. Because again, if ever there's a trade, this pawn is promoting. We don't have to worry about the stuff on the other side of the board. Black is too fast. So queen e2, queen g1 would be forced, otherwise queen here. And then I was looking at knight f2 check, king h2, knight g4 double check, followed by f2. And the fact that this blocks the white queen from coming into the g7 square, I think seals the deal in black's favor. So, wow, that's a crazy problem. I think I'm going to end the video there. Again, I wish that problem would have gone on longer, but it was still interesting. So, all right, we're getting into tougher problem sets here, climbing the rating ladder. Just stick with it, guys. I mean, it's a long process, as I said at the beginning of the video, but keep doing the right things. And I will see you again in another climbing the tactics training ladder. All right, guys, talk to you later. Bye.